Alleluia. Om Mani Padme. Om. Allah.
Welcome. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and today we're speaking with Kate Murray, and Kate's the head organiser of the Sunday Assembly in Melbourne. We'll talk more about the Sunday Assembly later, but first we'll just have a look at Kate's spiritual history. Kate, where did it all begin?
Well, I was raised as a Christian, but my parents we moved around a lot. They were both in the Navy. So, so I became what I call a nomadic Christian, which is we moved from place to place and we just went to our local church, whatever that happened to be. So I ended up experiencing from a very young age a wide variety of Christianity, basically, and was quite aware of how diverse Christianity was. Then when I was about in grade 4, I went to a Catholic primary school, and then I went on to an all-girls Catholic high school. And so I was immersed in Catholicism, all my friends were Catholic, and to go from more liberal sort of Christianity like Baptist Church, for example, which is much more about community, much more uplifting, much more lighthearted, to the firm, sort of ritualistic patterns of Catholicism, that kind of threw me off my perch a bit. And that's when I first started questioning Christianity as a whole, or just questioning ethics and morality, really, and asking, if this is so diverse, if Christianity can be interpreted in so many different ways, what else am I missing that isn't necessarily set in stone? From there, I went back to public school for VCE. I'd had enough of Catholicism. And then from there, I became a Wiccan. And then I went on to New Age beliefs, so quite diverse sort of spiritual stuff, and some with, some without God. And then, so I just formed my own belief system for a number of years. And then it wasn't until about 2011 that I realised I was an atheist, and it was more of a realisation than a revelation. And I realised I'd probably been an atheist for a while and just hadn't put that label upon myself. So, and that's where I am today.
So that label atheist, what did that mean to you when you said, I think I'm an atheist? What did you interpret it as?
Yeah, well, to me it meant that I didn't believe in God, and I didn't believe in the Christian God. So to me it meant that I rejected the idea of a giant man in the sky and the rules of the Christian text, or even actually Judeo-Christian altogether, because it's the same guy in all three stories. So, yeah. Trilogy. But, and I didn't think about the wider definitions of God, of course. I just thought about those ones. But it was interesting because I had friends say to me, you don't want to be calling yourself an atheist. Even if you don't believe in God, you don't want to run around telling people you're an atheist because it has a stigma. And I thought that can't be right. But then I went into reading or hearing about Dawkins and Hitchens and, these sorts of prominent atheists. And I went to some social groups and all of this, and I realised that, atheist wasn't necessarily a label that I wanted to show prominently, because it does have this stigma of people who are not just godless, but are anti-theist rather than atheist, which is a pity, because they're the extremists of that group in my experience. It's just that often the extremists are the loudest. So yes.
Yes, that's right. Now that's an interesting transition that you're talking about. Let's just go back to the earlier experience before you went into the Catholic system. What did that look like? What was it about that which was so comforting at the time?
Yeah, so my best experiences were with St Kilda Baptist Church. And St Kilda at the time was very different as well. And Baptist Church was lovely. It was probably the place my family spent the longest as well, so that's part of it. But also there was a real sense of community there. It wasn't just about going to church and to Sunday school and learning about, the teachings of Jesus and the Bible. It was a lot more than that. It was a network, a social network of people who helped each other out inside and outside of church. So we used to have social events outside of church all the time. When someone needed gardening done, all the people from the church would come around, they'd have a working bee in their backyard, or we'd have bake sales, or, we'd all volunteer in an op shop for a day. There were all these really fun, wonderful things, and it was a community that we were a part of, and all my friends were, part of the church and stuff like that. So, yeah, to me, the community was the wonderful thing about that, and that's something that I've now tried to replicate in Sunday Assembly Melbourne, to try and bring back that sort of a sense, but without God.
That's very interesting. We'll obviously come back to that. But there was a fairly well-known person as the pastor there at that time, wasn't it? Yeah,
so my pastor at the time was, the Reverend Tim Costello, and he was also our next-door neighbour. So we grew up, Costellos and the Murrays grew up together, which is lovely. His daughter's the same age as me, so...
Right.
Yeah, and then he was my SRI teacher when I was in public school as well, so my religious education teacher. And I saw him at church. He was everywhere, Mr. Costello. So, yeah.
Well, he is still everywhere.
He still is, yeah.
But there's a sort of a heart feeling going on there about that. Was there some input from Tim Costello that made that so, or is it just the Baptist Church per se?
That's a good question, because I've never really been a member of another Baptist church. Okay. And Tim is definitely a charismatic and eloquent and intelligent person.
Yes.
So he's a hard man not to like, even if you disagree with him, he's a hard man not to like. So, and I definitely think that to me, even now, that community that he formed in St Kilda that I was lucky to be a part of is my idea of what Christianity should be. Yeah. So that was my understanding.
There's another person who is hard to not like, but it's Father Time, and we're out of it.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and today we're speaking with Kate Murray, and she's the head organiser of the Sunday Assembly in Melbourne. We were at St Kilda and the Baptist Church and Tim Costello and talking about community. That community seemed to have had a big impact on you. What did it look like in its extended form? Is it still with you, that feeling for community?
Definitely. And I actually still know a lot of the people from that church today. And that was when, I must have been about 7. And now I'm in my 30s. And I still have connections from that community. And I think that's the testament to all communities, really, not just the Baptist church, is that good community lasts. You make ties and you make a social network that those bonds are very firm. And it's also a sensation, being a part of a network like that, it's a sensation that not everybody gets to experience these days, unfortunately. In this modern world, we have online communities, which is nice, but that's not physical human interaction. No. And it's so easy for us to stay indoors or from home to work and back again in our separate houses where we hardly even say good day to the neighbour, and not have a spot where we gather together to find what we have in common, explore the things that we don't have in common, and create those human connections. And when you do create those human connections, you can get so much more done and live such better lives.
Yes, I'm sorry to keep referring back to it, but I can see the seeds of the Sunday Assembly being sown all the way through this.
Yes.
All about community. Yeah, very good. Okay, we roll over from that and we go to the Catholic system. We go to the Catholic school. What did that look like? When you first went into it, what was it like?
It was a shock at first, because I was always a quite fervent Christian, and I was always a very devout Christian. From a young age, I wanted to be just like Jesus, and I loved Mother Teresa, and I had quite a few heroes, all Christian. But the Catholic Church was such a different flavour of Christianity from what I was used to. It was much more regimented. There were a lot of rules that I'd never even heard of before. Even though I'd been to church, I'd read the Bible, I'd been to Sunday school, I thought I knew everything. Turns out, there was even more to it than that. And Mass, as opposed in Catholic Church as well, it's not as engaging. It's not about exploring ideas as much. It's more about stand up, sit down, say the right words at the right time. So at first as a child it was quite a shock, and like a bit of a culture shock. Then as a teenager, by then I'd settled in, I'd made my friends, and I was fairly happy, but I found a lot of conflict in what I was being taught as I became a woman, especially in all-girls school, because, of course, women have equal rights now, and there's feminism. And they want to produce independent, strong women that other women can look up to, of course. But at the same time, they're telling us that we can't control our infertility and we should be abstinent, we should get married and keep our husbands happy. And I found it very hard to resolve these two things at the same time. How am I supposed to be an independent woman when I can't make my own decisions about how my life's going to go, or when my role in life is meant to be to please someone else, and things like that. So that began my questioning, really.
I suggest there might be some questioning that Pope Francis is going through at the same time now, because it is obviously a conflict. So comfort, was there any comfort in that structure, in being part of something which had such certainty and ritual?
I definitely came to like ritual, because it is, if you have a system, or something standard, it's predictable, and predictability can be very comforting.
Yes.
Because you know what's expected of you and you know what tomorrow is going to bring. But I don't know if, to me, in my search to live a meaningful life, which I'm pretty sure all humans want to do or aspire to do, I don't think it's productive to have that standard way of living where you don't question, you don't change your ideas, and you don't step out of, a monotonous existence.
Yeah.
So
out of the constraints of doctrine and dogma.
That's it.
Surrounding many Catholic churches, though, and Catholic parishes, there's quite a rich social activity. Did you find that had reflected anything of your earlier Christian experience?
Not as strongly, but there was definitely a lot of, there was definitely community still. And because my school was in a certain area and everyone came from the surrounding suburbs, so, families got to know each other and stuff. But I definitely didn't feel, I think that in my experience with Catholicism, it was a lot more judgmental than Baptist was. Yes. Catholics don't say, anyone can come to church in Catholicism, but I was never baptised as a Catholic, and as a child I was never allowed to take communion. So I was separated from the other children, not allowed to join in and break bread. And, to me, as a child coming from a church where anyone who walks in the door is welcome to break bread with us, we're told that Jesus opened his arms to everybody.
Yes.
And then to go to a church where they say, no, little girl, you sit down, you're not one of us, I think is quite confronting, But there are wonderful things about the Catholic Church as well. I don't want to sound like I've only got negative things to say. I definitely had good experiences as well. But overall, I don't think that it had that open-hearted warmness that I found in other congregations.
No, and that is a cogent observation for a young person, as you were. Being welcomed, being embraced is extremely important. So it's very relevant to make that observation, I'm sure. Now, I want to ask you some more questions about Wicca, etc.
Yep.
But we're coming to a break, so I'll get ahead of the time. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Kate Murray. And Kate is the head organiser for the Sunday Assembly in Melbourne. During the break, we were talking about a Catholic, Father Bob.
Yep.
And you were saying that Father Bob has quite a lot of good things to say about Sunday Assembly.
Yeah, so that is one Catholic that I definitely have a place in my heart for, Father Bob. Although controversial as he is, I couldn't say I agree with him on everything. I doubt anybody does. But at the start of Sunday Assembly, he was very supportive. We were at the South Melbourne Commons, which is right next to St Peter and Paul's, where he was a father for a long time. So he helped us get that venue, and he came along to some of the first Sunday Assemblies and was a really great support. And I think his ability to say, even as a Catholic priest, with his own, his own organisation and his own venue and stuff, to say, no, we welcome everyone, as long as you're not causing any harm, as long as you're not protesting against us or, anything like that. He had a look at Sunday Assembly, he liked what it was doing, and he helped us out. And I think that's wonderful that people from different groups that have we have the common goal of creating community, he and us. So,
well, you're talking about guys like Tim Costello and Father Bob. These are guys, extraordinary guys, who pop out and make an impact, no matter where they do it.
Yeah.
Let's wander off into Wicca. How did that happen?
Yeah. So I think, I was in my late teens, and I think that for me, Wicca was probably predominantly a rebellion against the Catholicism. So just to swing completely the other way, I'm done with this and now I'm going to go off and be a Wiccan. And at the time I thought it was a big rebellion, and looking back I realised it wasn't that big of a step, because Wiccan practice is very much about ritual, and it's very much about the smells and bells, the same sort of stuff as Catholicism, lighting the candles, having some incense, all of that sort of stuff. So in a way, I think I was trying to rebel, but I was rebelling into something very similar that I was already in. So, yeah.
That's a beautiful description, the smells and bells. That really sums it up. With Wicca, the high points, what were was there something about it in general which started to focus you a bit? Yeah,
I think, partially, as I was saying about, growing into a woman within the Catholic Church, Wicca practice is kind of the opposite, where the female is lauded, and celebrated a lot. So I think that was very appealing to me at the time, rather than being ashamed of the form that I was born in. All of a sudden I was allowed to celebrate it and mix closely with other women who also celebrated femininity. So there was that. But also, again, Wicca is about community. It's about getting together and doing ridiculous things like creating spells or, whatever, or eating feasts. But there's fun in that, and there is connection in that, and it is coming together, in that same way, and creating a little group or a coven, or whatever. Great for teenage girls,
Yes.
But yeah.
And it sort of celebrates fertility, doesn't it? In
Yes.
its own way.
Yeah.
So that was, as you say, it was quite contrary to the experience that you were having.
Yeah, very much.
About that question. How does Wicca, like one of the questions that arises as far as your Catholic experience is talking to women about the fertility, etc. There seems to be a hole in that because men don't get spoken to about their fertility, etc. Is Wicca also, is that just female focused, or does it bring the male into it as well?
It's a great question. I think that it is predominantly female focused in my experience. Yeah, mind you, my experience was when I was young. I didn't become like a theologian of Wicca or anything. So I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who know a lot more than I do. Yes. Men are included, but they, in my experience, they did play the lesser role, very much like women in Christianity sometimes end up playing the lesser role. The men were more supportive of the female. I don't know if that's how it's done everywhere, but that was in my circle,
yes. Okay, let's give New Age a run then. What happened with that?
Yeah, so then when I went to public school and I was already into a bit of Wicca, and the people that I met there that had similar sort of ideas had much broader ideas than I did. And they said, well, if you think that, what do you think about this? And all of a sudden, because I'd stepped into this realm where I was allowed to question things now and anything was possible, I'd given up. I don't know if I'd fully given up Christianity, and I think it will always be the foundation for some elements of my personality, but you know, I definitely stepped away from that for the time being. So all of a sudden, the opportunities were endless, and I started taking in every kind of idea that came my way. When someone said, did you know that, there's energies, tangible forces of energy that we can see and control, I'd be like, all right, tell me more. Or if someone said, we can connect and commune with animals, all right, tell me more about that. So I went into this sort of area where I basically cherry-picked the bits that I liked and got rid of the ones I didn't, things like horoscopes even. Like I didn't believe in the horoscopes in the paper, but I thought that birth charts were very important. So it was a good time for me though, because it was a freedom of belief for me where I got to dictate what I believed in rather than being part of a formalised organisation.
Right. And then you rolled again into Sunday Assembly. Now we're coming to the end, so we'll just do a little bit of a synopsis here, because next week, if you'll come back, we'll talk about Sunday Assembly. Yeah. What was the key that rolled you into that?
Wow, that's a good question as well. I think it was the fact that when I went into atheism and tried to find community within atheism, I actually found atheist community to be very adversarial and a lot of conflict of ideas and a lot of opposition within the community. There wasn't cohesion, and I wanted to create something with more cohesion.
We'll create something with more cohesion next week, Kate. If you can come back, that would be wonderful. And we'll talk about Sunday Assembly. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week to speak to Kate about Sunday Assembly. Bye for now.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om, Allahu